Welcome, everyone. I am Sneha Shah Coltrane at NCDPI. We also have Vanessa Wren from DPI here to spend a little bit of time with you today on an overview of the remote instruction plans in response to COVID-19. We are just absolutely so pleased that all of you are here with us today. We have over 200 folks here, and we are grateful that you are here. Next slide, please. We also wanted to let you know of some WebEx housekeeping, that this session is being recorded. If you have questions, please enter them into bit.ly/RI questions. That way we can gather your questions and put them into an FAQ. We will be sending you a link of the recording of this session, a copy of the slide deck, and an FAQ document by Friday, along with lots of other stuff that we will be discussing with you today. Before we get started, oh yes, so like I said, we have Dr. Vanessa Wren with us, who is one of the work group leaders for instructional planning and scheduling, as well as the director of DTL here at the department. And then you have myself, Sneha, another work group leader, and I also oversee advanced learning and gifted ed. But I know both of us have been very active lately with all of you, and so we're just so glad to be here with you. Before we get started, we did want to thank you for your incredible work that you continue to do every day, being our frontline educators. All that is happening in light of COVID-19 is absolutely remarkable. We know we have been in a state of emergency, and we had to switch, that weekend of March 14th and 15th, March 16th came, and it was a whole nother world. And we are just so excited to be here with you today to support you during the reopening of schools, where I know all of you are working to be incredibly more intentional and strategic to ensure a quality remote learning with whatever lay before us in this next academic year. Vanessa, would you like to add anything?
Sneha, wonderful introduction. So glad that you all could join us today. I would like to add that the purpose of this webinar is for you to understand the 15 criteria for the remote instruction plan. And we're going to review each one of those with you today and make sure that you understand each component of that. Our job is not to evaluate your remote instruction plan. That is not our goal. Our goal is to support you so you know how to develop that plan, and that we are collecting the plans like we need to do per the legislation that's guiding this work. And so with that, we are ready to go through each of the 15 components in just a moment here.
So just as a reminder, to give you kind of to set the stage, the remote instruction plans are required for all public school units. And that is a relatively new term the last year we have been using. It's also in legislation. And so this legislation and this requirement applies to all of our school districts, all of our charter schools, all of our lab schools, as well as any regional schools. I know we're also working to figure out what's happening with our juvenile justice schools as well. But all public school units will be submitting these plans. We do have 15 components, as Vanessa shared with you, that we will be going through that with you today. The plans are due by July 20th this summer. So we will be here to support you these next 7 weeks or so to help you get ready to submit this plan. So that way you have a framework for your public school unit to develop quality remote learning for future COVID-19, possible future COVID-19 disruptions, and to set a stage for the future. right? And this is a great opportunity for us to think about not just COVID-19, but just quality instruction as we move forward. And perhaps this whole all new world of going more remote will change our educational framework in other ways as well. This is all based on Senate Bill 704, which was ratified into Session Law 2023, and then put into board policy with the State Board Policy SPLN 006. The legislation actually had 13 required parts, but hearing input from the field, and especially to ensure a lot of our special populations are addressed, we added component number 14, as well as 15 as a direct response to our superintendents, CAOs, and CTOs that gave us feedback of ensuring that limitations were addressed in the plans, because we know there still remains incredible variance across the state. And it's important while you develop a plan to also be able to share with the General Assembly and all of your stakeholders what are some possible limitations that you will be facing in your public school unit. So without further ado, Vanessa is going to take you through those 15 components. Vanessa?
Thank you, Sneha. So we're going to start with component 1. And this component ensures that you are collaborating with your entire community. So it states consulting with teachers, administrators, instructional support staff, parents, students, community partners, and other stakeholders in developing the plan and effectively communicating the plan with all of those parties. So we have made sure that we've collected from LEA superintendents their point of contact. We have updated lists from charters, lab schools, and our regional schools who the leader is there. And one of the things that we will have on the template that you will be receiving and we'll talk about today is the opportunity for you to share who your group has been that has come together to develop this plan. But the point of having other stakeholders involved is to make sure you're meeting the needs of everyone who will be taking part in this plan. So component number 2, the second one, is making sure that training for teachers and staff on the effective use of the remote instruction resources that are going to be utilized in your school and the process for students to submit their completed work has been clearly identified and communicated. And part 2 of that is also identifying any learning management systems, online instructional resources, or offline instructional resources that are going to be made available to students by grade level. So one of the things that I want to make sure you realize that this is a multifaceted component. It talks about training, it talks about communication, and online and offline resources. So in order to help support you with that, inside of the template that will be shared out, there will be a spreadsheet that has several of the most commonly used resources, which you can use to identify your online and your offline resources. And we will also share further directions on how you will submit that with your template. But I'm pointing out here what the spreadsheet would look like with those drop downs as well. I want to make sure that we're pointing out all the multi-components of each one of these, because it's important that you address each part of the required 15 components. With that, we're going to move to component 3. And this one is clearly communicating your staff roles and expectations on remote instruction days, including if that is on a teacher work day. Teacher accessibility and non-certified staff work days and responsibilities all need to be clearly communicated what those are. The plan can include variances for staff expectations when remote instruction days are also used as teacher work days. But the point here is that every staff member, if they are working remotely, or if they're working on site during a remote instruction day, they totally understand what is expected of them. And some of the things that you might think about are teachers required to check in with each student each day. You might want to look at ways that you are standardizing those expectations through the length of the workday on remote learning days as well. And then component number 4. And this is the one where you are going to be surveying your student and teacher home connectivity and providing for remote instruction that is appropriate for teachers and students that have limited connectivity capabilities, including the opportunities for students to download materials in advance when that is a practical solution. So you need to think through how you will do that. How often will you get that touch point data? Because we understand, particularly with students, reliable connectivity can change throughout the school year, depending on where they are living or if they've moved or some conditions have changed. So you want to look at what those options are for assessing remote learning materials, and particularly if they do not have ongoing reliable connectivity. Component number 5 is engaging with your community partners on services that parents and students can utilize on remote instruction days. And this would include community partners willing to provide free broadband access for connectivity or childcare options. And again, this is a twofold question. This is understanding where they are, partnering with your community, but then also communicating out to your stakeholders what those connectivity and childcare options are. And we understand that each local area has their own special resources that they might have. Think about Rotary clubs, YMCAs, faith-based organizations that are there to assist you. So each one of these will look different for each school, depending on what resources you have available to you. And then, of course, the needs of your students as well will need to be taken into your remote instruction plan. And that leads us to component number 6. And component number 6 is about the instructional design. And this is about developing effective design and delivery of remote instruction lessons with your professional learning communities that you have with your educators. And we have developed 7 clear constructs of effective remote instruction learning. And the point of those constructs is that you are staying just as connected with your students when they're off campus as you do when they are on campus, and you're taking account to all of the social and emotional needs that they have. Those 7 items, and this will be shared with you in guidance that will be coming out this Friday, are instructional time, connections to families and students, engagement that is aligned to standards, equity and choice, teacher feedback on student work, collaboration among students, and paying attention to the social and emotional well-being of your students. So those are the 7 constructs that will go into that effective design of remote learning. And required part number 7 has to deal with providing clear communication. So it reads like this: teaching and practicing opportunities for students on accessing and using remote instruction platforms, think about your LMSs, and methods including how to locate, complete, and submit assignments. It is also stated here that you need to create regular opportunities for students to practice how they will use remote learning tools while they are on campus face-to-face. And so one of the things you might want to think about with this is that you are thinking about what are the acceptable forms of communication. Are you standardizing those between your schools? But there's many things to take into account here, but you're setting your students up to be successful where parents and students clearly understand what is going to be used and how they will submit their work. We cannot over communicate to our children and their families exactly what needs to happen on those days. Component number 8 is communicating your learning targets to students on each remote instruction day and ensuring that lesson design provides the opportunity for instructional time, practice, application, and the ability to demonstrate their learning. This is also going to include a process for monitoring the quality of the remote instruction materials. So this is where you're going to have to scan your schools, look at what is going to be used, put a system in place to decide what is a quality remote instruction material and how am I monitoring what those are. So several moving parts to this required component, but a lot of opportunity to improve the quality of the instruction here. Component number 9 is ensuring that remote instructional time, practice, and application actually supports the learning growth for continuous mastery of the standard course of study. This includes measuring the assessment guidelines that are appropriate to each grade level. This also includes establishing deadlines for the submission of assignments and the methods to assess and grade during remote instruction. Component number 10. Oh, let me just say one more thing about 9. That is online and offline. So I don't want you to only think that that's going to be online. You've got to plan for that for both modalities, for your students that can connect, for your teachers that can and cannot connect as well. Those are things to think about to include in your plan. So component number 10 is next. And this is the component that reads that you need to ensure that students with disabilities have equal access to remote instruction provided by their school. And that remote instruction has to be provided in a manner consistent with their IEP or 504. Remote learning day supports need to be considered and included when the IEP or 504 is initially developed. And if the 504 IEP comes under review during this appropriate time, that you have put guidance in there for how that student's IEP will be met during remote instruction. Component number 11 is tracking and reporting attendance on remote instruction days, including the protocols for determining what the attendance is and what reporting system is going to be used. What will qualify as a student being in attendance on a remote instruction day? And I will share with you that specific guidance will be coming out about what that is. There will be some policy guidance that will guide you in that, but you need to consider how you will track that at your district to make sure that expectations are being met. We will be putting new calendar types inside of the state student information system, PowerSchool. So there will be calendar types that you can choose from to designate remote instruction days. But this is really going to the heart of what qualifies as remote instruction. And again, there will be specific language and guidance coming from our department to guide you in that area. And then component 12, providing online and offline contact options for students to communicate with teachers and staff during remote instruction days. So this is the area where you want to think about, if my student gets stuck and they can't raise their hand like they could in a traditional classroom and get the assistance that they need, how could I support them on remote days? And some things to think about is help desk, office hours, contact hours, things that will be monitored in a timely manner to support students with their instruction. And then component number 13 is also providing technology support. So technology support in case a student runs into technical difficulties. So you can think of things like a help desk, a phone number that they can call, and even a monitored email One of the things is that we never want is the technology to be a barrier for a student to complete their studies. So this is the part of your plan that you will write where you're thinking about what method works for my school that will help students overcome any technical difficulty that they have. We know that often technical difficulties for students are login issues. And as soon as you can get that student logged in, they can be off and getting their work taken care of. So think about some of the ways that you would do that. And again, we'll be offering some guidance in that area as well with some suggestions. But help desk, phone numbers, specific email addresses and ticketing systems are things that most districts will use to approach this part of their remote instruction plan. And then next, item 14 is responding to the needs of your English learners, your academically and or intelligently gifted learners, and students who have been identified and served under McKinsey-Vento. So again, what supports, what adjustments will you make in your online and offline instruction on remote days to ensure that these groups of students have their instructional needs met? And that is a very important part of your plan that we want to make sure that you have included. And lastly, component number 15 is describing some of the limitations that exist in the implementation of quality remote learning based on each one of your specific school's needs. Some of the limitations that you might encounter are limitations with devices, broadband, professional development, instructional resources, digital content. Of course, some of you would have transportation issues, childcare issues, and child nutrition. We want to make sure that you have the opportunity to describe what your limitations are as you implement effective remote instruction. And she's going to talk to you about the actual template that we will be sharing out for you to submit your remote instruction plan.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Jill Darrow. So here is a picture of the template that you will receive. So we've not linked the template here. What we've done is there's a picture of it, and you will get an email with this template, or the lead for each public school unit is going to get an email with this link. The reason why we're not sending it out to everyone is we don't want to have confusion for this template. We only want one per PSU, and if we gave everybody the link to make a copy, we could have various copies floating out there that we don't want to happen. So just know, first of all, this template was developed with a group of CTOs, superintendents, chief academic officers, some charter leaders. The template is very open-ended for local flexibility. So what we're going to do right now is just kind of look at the open-endedness of this template. It addresses all of the 13 items directly from Senate Bill 704. And as you see, they're very open-ended and have pretty much turned each item into a question. For item number 2, as Dr. Wren stated, in addition to this template, you will have to make a copy of a spreadsheet to fill in for your online, offline, and learning management system and resources. So that's what number 2 looks like. 3 through 15, again, just open-ended boxes for you to be able to fill in your plans. So if you already have a plan, just write your description of the plan here. And then we have 2 optional areas for items number 16 and 17. These 2 are optional. And then there is space. If you have additional things that you would like to address in your plan, you can just address it below these 2 optional items. Pam, if you could go back to the slide deck. And advance to the next slide. So by this Friday, each PSU, meaning all the districts and all the charters, will have a point of contact, which will be their remote instruction plan coordinator, and they will receive an email that will have this presentation. It will have a link to this forced Google document. If your district does not use Google, there will also be an attachment as a Word document. There will be a link for the spreadsheet as well as an Excel spreadsheet. So just depending upon your district, whether you utilize Google or not, your district can decide if they're going to use Google or Office 365 to collaborate on this document. Your coordinator will also receive step-by-step instructions and submission process. In addition, you will have a guidance document that will give you support for each one of the components within the remote instruction plan. Before we move on to the next slide, I also have a few questions that have bubbled to the top. And so Vanessa and Sneha, if you don't mind unmuting yourselves, I'll read you some of the questions and then you can address those. So in the remote instruction requirement of days for next year, are PSUs allowed to use more than the required 5 days?
Right now, there is legislation that discusses 5 days in your actual calendar. However, we know more than likely, based on infectious disease experts in our own DHHS, that more than likely we will need other remote instruction days. So our department, the state board, are all working with legislators to attempt to get that changed because of where we are today. This plan should reflect your remote instruction for those 5 days, but also in case we went full remote learning. And that really, this is that framework for you to begin thinking about and to really dive into a framework for quality remote instruction. Vanessa?
I'll just add that you're currently, just like you said, there is only 5 days, but we know there will be discussions and potential changes for additional remote instruction. And this will give you a springboard so you won't be in the position that you were on March 13th, where you were quickly moving to emergency remote instruction. But this will give you a framework to go through and have well thought out protocols in place, expectations in place, where your students and your parents and your teachers are in a much more prepared spot if we go to more remote instruction than the 5 days that the current legislation allows.
All right, very good, thank you. Next question. Can PSUs that have a limited space for students employ a fully virtual program during the first quarter or semester of the school year?
So again, right now, remote instruction is limited to the 5 days. We do believe there will be a change on that. We also believe there will be DHHS guidance and our NCDPI reopening schools guide released and very soon in the next week or two. So I believe all of these will help you to prepare to reopen school. I think we need to be prepared for lots of options, but right now, the idea is that schools are reopening on the 17th of August.
Very good, thank you. All right, another question is, for consideration for students with disabilities, will the state guidelines assist with where this will be identified in ECATS and guidance of wording of these services and supports?
I will jump here and say that you will be receiving more detailed guidance from our Exceptional Children's Department and a guidance document that will release on Friday. And they will be helping you with those components of your IEPs and your 504s.
They also, I know, have a robust communication system. So if you feel like you need something from the EC division, please reach out to your contacts with the Exceptional Children's Division. I know they have released many communications, and I think that would be super helpful.
Thank you. Another question is, how will the limitations be addressed by the state board? For example, child care agencies not available. How are schools going to be held accountable if it's out of their control?
So I think I may need a little bit more information in this. I do feel like there will be lots of guidance provided. And I do want to clarify, thank you, Mr. Miller, that a lot of our participants here are charter school participants, and they are exempt from the August 17th start date, but school is still expected to begin at whatever date that you all will be planning. Regarding childcare, et cetera, to my knowledge, there are no requirements regarding childcare coming from any agency. I think the idea is that you have thought of options to share with families, not necessarily providing it yourself, but whether it is in the community that there's a YMCA or other resources like Dr. Wren mentioned earlier.
Thank you. Another question is, how will the coordinators be designated or chosen? And please remember that most of this audience are charter schools for this.
For charter schools, we will be sending them directly to the principals. That is a list that we will be getting from the Office of Charter Schools. So I know they have the most accurate list. So that is who that will be. And then for the regional school, we will also be sending it to their principal, as well as to our lab schools. Laura has given us all of your principals' names. So for non-school districts, traditional school districts, all the principals will be getting that communication.
Very good, thank you. Do these plans need to be approved by a school board, a PSU school board?
Your plans are not required to be approved by your school board. It is certainly an option for you to take your plan to your board, but that is a decision that you will make at your PSU level. We will be collecting a copy of each one of your plans, and we are required, North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, the agency, we are required to actually turn in your plan to the General Assembly. Again, like I said earlier, we are not going to evaluate your plans. We are going to follow the letter of the law, where we turn your plan in, and we will report on how completed your plan is. That's why I went over the multiple components of each one of the 15 to make sure you might not leave a piece of that out. And we've addressed each of that in the template.
Now, when you do submit the template, it is, the legislation does say that the governing body has submitted this plan. So technically you don't need to have it approved. I do know Dave Machado has said that it's probably a good thing to get it approved, but know that when you submit it, it is representing your governing body.
Thank you for that. Another question is, are schools allowed to have child care programs on campus during remote instructional days?
As long as you are following the DHHS guidance that may be out during your remote instruction day. So you are normally allowed to have child care provided. You just need to make sure that you are following any DHHS guidance that might be available in your area.
And last question that I have for right now, just to be clear about the 5 days being added to the calendar, are they essentially there to help schools and districts prepare for remote instruction in the event of a closure and to help troubleshoot and evaluate their plans?
I think there are lots of different ways to look at that. I don't think we can speak directly to the intent of the legislation. However, we do think those 5 days initially were to think that was great planning for us to practice and to make sure we are prepared for any further school closures. Any other questions, Jill?
I think that covers my, do charters, this just came in, do charters have the ability to choose their first day of school?
So my understanding, and I am not the authoritative source for calendars. I don't know if we have anybody from charter school, the Office of Charter Schools here, but my understanding is that yes. And thank you, Alex, for that double check. That yes, you are still able to adjust your calendars. We did have another question that says, if you have a K-12 school, do we submit 3 plans? No, you submit one because you're one school, but I would believe that you would need to address how you would be meeting those needs of all of your grade levels.
Sneha, in the chat, there's another question being asked, will funds be provided to purchase digital devices for lower SES families that cannot afford one?
Vanessa, I think this is your shop about allocations.
Yes. So there has been some funds appropriated to help charters and LEAs to purchase devices. And we will be taking a formula allocation to our board this week. But $30 million was made available to share out among anyone who answered the survey. We sent a survey out called the House Bill 1043 Devices and Connectivity Survey. I believe that survey was due back on March 26th. And based on your response to that survey, you will be eligible for funding. One of the wording of the appropriations is these funds must be used for districts who have need. So if you were a charter school and you answered that survey and you said you do not have a need for student devices, then you would not be eligible to receive those per the legislation. And but there will be some funding available that will be distributed to schools, and the State Board of Education will decide this week what that allocation model will look like.
All right, and last question that's come in on our form. Well, a couple more are coming in. Is this information for this webinar is the same information that will be provided at 4 o'clock. The difference in the webinars is that we targeted charters during this time period because charters questions are sometimes a bit different than our larger district questions. So that's why we had 2 separate days. I mean, 2 separate times.
Jill, if you don't mind, can we unmute Alex Quigley? Alex has some really great information as head of the charter school board. I think it would be great if he could address some of the charter school, other things that they have been sharing. Is that something, Pam, you can do? Alex, get ready. Oh, sorry if that's harder than,
Yeah, Pam's going to have to do that.
okay, I wonder if I can do it. That's okay. What we'll just do is, Alex, sorry, we're not going to be able to unmute you. It's okay, Pamela. But Alex wanted me to make sure to share with all of you that to make sure what he is saying, the Office of Charter Schools and the Charter School Board has been sharing, that everybody really create what they see as their ideal vision to the plan, then execute. And remember that you have flexibility. I believe Dave Machado mentioned that a couple of weeks ago when we shared about this on or last week on the Thursday call with charters. That this is really an opportunity to think of how you would like to do it. And then when all the allocations are determined and some other information gets figured out, you will be then able to be flexible. Thanks, Alex. Anything else?
If a charter has 190 days on their calendar, can 5 remote instructional days be included, or do what they have to add an additional 5 days?
Vanessa?
Yeah, I will say that according to the plan, it is, you need to have 5 days, and that was not to add additional teacher work days. That was to increase the number of student days. So your student days will increase by 5 days.
And there is a document on the financial website that has that information on there, that the FBS website has done that. And I believe Jessica has sent it out to the charter school leaders. One other thing I would like to discuss is just to remind you that Alex says in the Office of Charter Schools that they will not be requiring charters to submit amendments to their charters to run remote learning. So basically, this remote learning plan, you can consider like, quote, your amendment. This is how we're doing it for lots of other things as well for remote learning.
All right, and I have 2 more questions. Would you like those now, or?
Yes, let's go ahead and get them quickly, yes.
If limitations have been mitigated already, should they be added to the section with limitations that are on the plan?
I think that's, I mean, probably not, but if you think that was a large, heavy lift that you are very proud of course you can enter that if you like. But if it's no longer a limitation, then it's not anything to necessarily report to the General Assembly. But if you'd like to, the template is yours.
Okay. And do we know if lab schools have been included in the funding allocation for devices?
That will be a State Board of Education decision, and we should have more information coming forthwith. But if lab schools would have had to have filled out that survey in order to be eligible.
Thank you, ladies.
And my understanding is that a lot of the financial for lab schools could be potentially coming through the UNC system office and all of those allocations as well.
Thank you.
And one last reminder from Alex that, again, you do not need to submit this remote plan to CSAB or the state board for approval, which we know you usually have to submit things there, and that by submitting it through the process that you will receive on Friday will be the official submission to meet this legislative requirement.
Any other questions?
That's all I have so far.
Well, then let's move on to our next slide. We have further upcoming technical assistance. The purpose of today was to give you an overview of the plan. What are the components that you need to address in your plan? How will you submit that plan? What that template looks like. Next Tuesday, and we're calling these Technical Assistance Tuesdays, we will also have a 1-hour webinar where we will look at the specific components and provide some deeper guidance on and ideas, suggestions for those that are there. We took the plan and we broke it up into all the components that were technology or communication, which were 9 of those, and grouped those together. And so we will go deeper into those this coming Tuesday at 2 o'clock. And then we will have another webinar on June the 23rd, where we will look at the remaining components at a deeper level with guidance and some examples. And we'll have other folks on the call who can help you. In addition, we will have office hours open on each Tuesday, June 30th, July 7th, and July 14th from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, with folks on standby to assist you if you need it. We hope that we've given you enough information and you've got your teams together and you're ready to go, but we are here if you need further assistance. So this document will also be emailed out through the Office of Charter Schools, so you can see when those upcoming dates are. So I'm going to turn it over now to just remember that these plans are due July 20th, and we hope this has been helpful for you. We will collect all FAQs from this session, and we're going to do a follow-up session later this afternoon with our LEAs, and make sure that you have access to all of those questions so you can reference those as you complete your plan. We hope this.
Vanessa, I do think we have a few more questions before we stop the webinar.
Good. We want to get you all the information you need as soon as possible. Love these questions.
Vanessa, do you have someone that these schools can contact to see if their school submitted this survey?
Yes, we will have them contact, email me, and my email is up on this screen, and we will let you know if you submitted the survey. I will say that we talked about the survey on the weekly charter call, as well as the top 10 that Jessica Swanky has been sending out as well.
Thank you. Another question is, will a completed exemplar plan or sample plan be provided?
No, we will not be providing a full sample plan because we know every single situation is very different and unique. However, we will have some sample resources and some samples of things districts and charters have been developing. And if you have one, we would love for you to share with us, and we'll add that to the list. But we will not be developing one exemplar plan because the variances are too great. And we know you all are the ones with the great expertise out there.
All right, another question is there an update on the discussion of Canvas from the House Bill survey?
The House Bill survey currently will allow districts who are current Canvas users to expand their licenses, or if you are not a current Canvas user, you may request funding to create a new contract with Canvas. Because these dollars that are coming down are from the Federal CARES Act, we cannot use any of this money to supplant what you may already had in place with Canvas. But there will be funding available for you if you need to expand your current licensing or if you want to start a new contract.
Very good, thank you. Do you all know if there's going to be guidelines for reopening schools in for in-person instruction and learning, or when those guidelines may be provided?
Yes, so the department is working in conjunction with DHHS to provide a reopening guide for all of North Carolina public schools. I believe within the next week to 2 weeks, that will be ready and distributed.
All right, very good. Do we know what will happen if a charter did not answer the survey?
We are required to report to the General Assembly on September 15th who did or did not answer the survey. That is the end of our obligation. And so we do not have any information that could specifically answer that question outside of that. We will be reporting who completed one and who did not.
So something that's super important with these remote instructional plans, and actually before the next webinar, we're going to add a slide on this, but something to note, we said it earlier, is that by September 15th, we have to turn around every single one of your plans and submit them directly to the General Assembly alongside of the lists of online and offline resources that are in that spreadsheet that has been included into the template, as well as looking for patterns and trends. So we may be coming back to you in September to get updated patterns and trends from you, and then we will also be submitting generally what we see. There is no evaluation, but we will be sending every one of these plans to the General Assembly.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that wraps it up. Vanessa, any other last words? And if not, I'll close us out.
No other last words. I think we're ready to close out.
Okay, thank you all so much for being here. Please know on Friday you will receive the information regarding the template, as well as regarding the submission of the plans, that feedback, as well as the guidance document. And we are just so grateful for you to be here and for continuing the work on behalf of North Carolina Public Schools and families. Again, everyone have a great, whatever day it is today. Okay, have a good afternoon.
Thank you.